Hello and welcome back to Slick Willy Fly. So today we're going to be making this. Except that today I'm probably going to make one with a weed guard and slightly larger. That's on a size 4 hook. This is going to be a size 1 stainless steel hook. So let's go ahead and get this in the vise nice and hard. Yes, I'm happy with that. And let's get it going. So I've pre-prepped my Marabou. I'm using purple Marabou. I've pre-prepped my Grizzly feathers. You've seen in other videos how I will take a feather from opposite sides of a cape so that they have the opposite curvature. This fly is it's like, I guess almost all flies anymore. It's a combination of flies. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a little bump on the back of the fly, because sometimes when you are using these kind of flies that have hackles for tails, when the fly gets wet, the tails want to stick together. So I'm hoping that by putting a little bump on the tail that we will avoid that. And I am using some ice dubbing in black. I think it's black peacock actually. Yeah, peacock black. And I'm using peacock black because it's got a little bit of shine to it, just in case it becomes visible, because this particular fly doesn't have a ton of flash like some of my other flies. So if I can add a little bit of flash in the back end here, I don't mind. But if you don't have any dubbing with flash, any dubbing will do. Most likely this dubbing will never be seen. And you'll see why when we make the fly. So I make this little ball. And now I'm going to go ahead and use these feathers that I pre-prepared. I have this cape and I take one feather from each side because that gives them the reverse curvature. So I have 2 feathers and I'm going to have them curving away from the hook. That's how I'm going to place them. But the length that I'm going to use, I'm probably going to use 1.5. There's 1. And I would say 1.5 the length of the shank of the hook is plenty. So you're probably wondering, why haven't I put on the dumbbell eyes? Well, I have found with this fly that if I put the dumbbell eyes on a little bit later, it goes a little bit better with this fly. But I'm going to do 2 wraps like I always do. I'm going to make sure that the feather is sitting exactly the way I want it to sit, and now I'm going to crank it tight. Beautiful. So now I have my guide for length. So it's very easy to match these up. And even though I have my guide for length, I almost always apply the second feather slightly longer, because it's so much simpler to draw it in after it's been placed. Beautiful. And lock it in. All right, so now I've locked in my 2 feathers. So now I'm going to create a dubbing loop. Cut this little tag. I'm going to go ahead and come all the way back to where the feathers started carefully, and I'm going to make a nice dubbing loop for my Marabou. I'm going to put a link in of, I think, one of the better videos that I've made, a video where I show how I prepare the Marabou. So I've pre-prepped the Marabou. And what did I use? I used purple Strung Marabou, and I used Ripple Ice in blue UV. And I really think that this blue UV goes really great with this purple. And you'll see it once this goes on the fly. I really think like this blue UV was damn near made for this purple. It just looks awesome together. So I'm going to carefully put my Marabou into the dubbing loop. This is basically like a big tasty fly at this point. And I'm just evening it out so I don't get too much bulk. I don't want a ton of bulk. Now I'm going to spin this up and locking in the Marabou. Definitely going to spin that more. Got a little bit trapped on itself. Okay, we're going to untrap some of this and spin it up some more. The fibers got locked in on itself. So you just use a needle and untrap fibers. You're gonna lose a few fibers, but it really doesn't matter. There's a ton of Marabou on this fly. So you don't really need to, but I'm gonna go ahead and give this a little bit more of a spin. Gosh, it really didn't spin like it normally spins, but I feel good that the Marabou's on there hard. I mean, I'm pulling hard with this needle. All right, we're gonna go ahead and dub this onto the hook. So I'm gonna draw everything back, just like when you palmer some other form of dubbing. I'm gonna pull my thread out of the way. Now I'm gonna dub in the same exact direction that I've been using the thread. So I'm gonna use the rotary function on my vise, but I'm going in the same direction as the thread. I know that that sounds weird, but it actually is it locks it in better. I'm just nice and tight up against the previous wrap, working my way up. Nice and tight. Palmering back on every single wrap. That came out beautiful. So I'm going to get my thread, and I'm going to bring my thread back to the dubbing, and I'm going to capture that dubbing loop, just like that. And once I've captured that dubbing loop, which I definitely have, I can go ahead and cut it away. Beautiful. Now, right now, this doesn't look super fluffy because I used a lot of saliva on my fingers. So it's actually a lot more wet than you think it is. But this Marabou will fluff out a lot. And you'll see that if you watch any of my Big Tasty videos, or actually you'll see it in the thumbnail. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get a I'm going to do this in relatively small little clumps. But I'm going to get, I have this deer hair, fine deer hair. And believe me, if you use fine, you want to do this in small amounts. You do not want to do this in large amounts. But I'm going to get a little bit of fine. And I'm going to lay it right on top, just like that. And I'm going to give this a wrap or two as gently as I can. And now I'm going to work it with my fingers around the hook, just like that. It really is impossible to get all of it. And once I'm happy, I've grabbed it tight in my left and I'm securing it with the thread. Just like that. That actually came out really good. Awesome. Now I'm gonna go ahead and trim away. Ooh, careful. Don't grab your long black hair. Nice. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move forward just a bit and probably put just a little bit more of this black deer hair. I'm going to repeat the process. Again, 2 gentle wraps. And now I'm going to work it around the shank of the hook. Once I'm happy, I pinch it really hard in my left and I crank on that thread. It's important that when you make this fly that you get a nice, strong thread, because you really do need to put some pressure on this fly. And I actually think that that came out fantastic. Really happy with the way this has turned out. And I am really cranking. You saw that spinning? I am really pulling hard on this thread. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a whip finish just to make sure nothing weird happens. In case my thread should break or anything should happen. I'm going to try and get my thread out of the way. And I am going to try to trim up these shorts because it's time for the dumbbell eyes. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and attach my dumbbell eyes the way I normally do. I'm going to attach them on the top of the hook here, which will make this fly ride hook side up, which is what we want. So I had pre-cut, using my special cutters, some medium dumbbell eyes. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to place them on top of the hook. Just like that. Now it's just going to be some X wraps, you know, a bunch in each direction. Some people say 10. I mean, honestly, I can't imagine counting X wraps. So I'm just doing it till I think they feel strong. And once they feel good, I'm going to get a little bit of zap. Give it a little touch of zap. Which is maybe an unnecessary step because I'm also going to use UV resin. and a couple more X wraps. And now I'm going to do some figure eights just to make sure everything is nice and tight. I'm going to come behind, whip finish. And basically the fly is done, unless of course you want to put a weed guard. Should we put a weed guard? We could do a weed guard, why not? Okay. If you're not interested in a weed guard, the fly is done. If you want to see how I put a weed guard on, give me another few minutes. So I'm going to get a little bit of my hard mono. I don't even use my good scissors to cut the hard mono. I use my wire cutters. This stuff is hard. You know, the scissors are nice. I want to take care of my scissors. So how do I like to do this? There's a million ways to do this, and possibly there's better ways than what I do, but this is the way I do. So I take it at about the halfway point in my piece, and then I have this it's just really, it's flat, it's completely flat. And I'm gonna give it, as best as I can, a good, hard, flat section. That's all I'm trying to do. Just like that. Because this will help it bend around the hook nicely. Just like that. Bingo. So now I'm going to take it and I'm going to apply it to my hook. Every time I do this, I get a little bit of deer hair trapped. And I know it's gonna happen, and I'm ready to live with that problem. Nice, I like it. That is looking really good. And it's just that simple. You put them on there nice and hard. I like to come behind them, so I make sure that they stay where I want them. And now I can whip finish this fly again. I'm gonna do a little trimming and whip finish. And when you put the UV resin on, this is gonna be basically bulletproof. All right, so I trapped a little bit of deer hair. So those gotta go. All right. So now what are we gonna do? Now we're going to do the UV finish. I'm using my fingers to put these pretty much where I want them, just like that. That looks great. Gosh, that came out great. Super simple little weed guard. I'm gonna get my UV resin. Like the way everything looks. And again, like you hear me say a ton of times, they have no rush. You take your time when you do this. And I use a pretty light coat. And I use the laws of physics because they're your friend. Alright. I love to, when I use my resins, I like to spin the fly because I really believe that when you spin the fly, and I spin in both directions, that it makes the you know, again, laws of physics, it just makes the coat get nice and even. And I'm not in any rush. I'm not mass producing flies. So for me to take a couple extra seconds and make the fly a little bit more perfect, well, that's what I want to do. Once I'm happy and that looks good, oh, time for a new battery. I zap it. I think my battery is low. Probably gonna go get a fresh battery and zap this again. But I'm sure that it, at least right now it's hard, but it might be tacky. Because if you don't cure it good, it has like a tackiness to it. Doesn't feel like it is as bright as it should be. But it's good for the purpose of the video. The only other thing you can do is I would trim my weed guards so that they are about maybe a hair longer than the hook. So I'm going to do them one at a time. And I think that came out perfect. Let's show you the fly. This is going to be my purple slider, redfish slider. I don't know what we'll call it. It's a redfish fly. It's a pretty traditional redfish fly. You've seen me make cockroaches that look kind of similar, and I think it came out really good. The tail came out really good, and it's just a good fly. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe, and see you on the next video. Thank you for watching.